Have you ever had a meaningful dream? Or maybe put it differently.
If I can remember.
Are you familiar with how you're supposed to interpret a dream?
Yeah.
Most people don't know this, that there's a whole section in the Gemara. It's in the Gemara Brochus, which is the first of all of the Gemaras, that goes through all kinds of dream interpretations. It's actually really interesting. But the Gemara does say a couple of disclaimers, and one of those disclaimers is that most dreams are meaningless, and most dreams are just the result of what's already on your mind. So don't read into the dream too much. But then it goes into this whole thing, like if you dream about this, it's supposed to represent that, and if you dream about the other thing, it's supposed to represent something else. And the and the principle is, if you dream about it when it's not already something on your mind. So one of the dreams that the Gemara talks about is, what does it mean if you dream about Pinchas? Pinchas is the hero of the parasha this week. The parasha is named after him. What does it mean if you dream about Pinchas? Now, what are the chances? First of all, you have no idea what Pinchas looks like, so how would you even know if you dreamt about Pinchas? But that is one of the fascinating things about dreams, is that in the dream it makes sense, even if logically it doesn't make sense. So you could have a dream, and in your dream you know that who you're looking at is so-and-so. So the Gemara wants to know, what happens if you dream about Pinchas? So the Gemara says, any person who dreams about Pinchas, that is a sign, Pele na'ase loi. Pele means something which is like mind-blowing, is going to happen to you. It's a very positive dream. You can expect that some incredible event is going to happen in your life. Then the Gemara says, and it seems like it's a continuation of the conversation, because then the Gemara says, if you dream about an elephant, how do you get from Pinchas to an elephant? What's the connection between Pinchas and elephant? Because it's the next thing on the list. So how do you say elephant in Hebrew? An elephant is a pill. So the Gemara says, any person who dreams of a pill, of an elephant, what's going to happen is pila'ois. Not one spectacular thing will happen to you, multiple spectacular things will happen to you. Then the Gemara says, and if a person dreams of pilim, of elephants, in the plural, then what's going to happen is pila'ois nasuloi. Then you're going to have spectacular events on top of spectacular events happening to you. Again, disclaimer, I don't think the Gemara was talking about people who hang out in Africa, where elephants are very much part of your thinking. Maybe you go to the bush and it's like on your mind. We're talking over there in Israel, where an elephant was a very unusual sight. So to have a dream about an elephant was considered a very unusual kind of a dream. In fact, seeing an elephant in those days, in that part of the world, was so unusual that you actually had to say a special brocha if you saw an elephant, because it was so rare. Nonetheless, what the Gemara is obviously telling us over here is that these things are all symbolic of incredible miracles or incredible events that are going to happen in your life. The question you've got to ask yourself is, what's the connection? What's the connection between Pinchas and Pele, something spectacular happening in your life? And what is the connection between an elephant and something spectacular happening in your life? Although the simple way to explain that is because it was so unusual for them to see an elephant, so to dream of an elephant was considered something that was very unusual, so therefore it indicated something very unusual was going to happen in your life. So let's just focus on the elephants for a few moments, and then we'll come back to Pinchas. Because if you have a look at what the Gemara is telling us, the word pil, elephant, and the word pele, something which is incredibly unusual, something spectacular.
In Hebrew, the word pele or pele is wonders.
Wonders, exactly. Which means something which is totally spectacular. It's wondrous. So the word pil and the word pele are similar words. They're made up of similar letters. So you can see that there's obviously some kind of a correlation between the spelling of the word pil and the spelling of the word pele. So that would indicate that there's a connection between the two of them. And then, of course, if an elephant is supposed to represent, because of the wordplay, supposed to represent wonders or something spectacular, then obviously if it's many elephants, it means many, many wonders. The question is, how do you get from Pinchas to this concept of wonders, or a wonder? So because the Gemara said, Pinchas, Pele in the singular, one wonder. A pil, an elephant, multiple wonders. Pilim, a herd of elephants, wonders upon wonders. So how do you get from Pinchas to a wonder? What's the connection? So Rashi says that if you know the story of Pinchas, then you'll know that Pinchas had multiple miracles that happened to him in the key story of his life, which was the story of the end of last week's parasha, which leads to this week's parasha being named after him, and especially the fact that he gets a very unique reward. We'll talk more about that reward later, but he gets a very unique reward because of his actions. So what's the famous story of Pinchas? Remember, after Bilam failed to curse the Jewish people, every time he opened his mouth, the greatest brachos came flying out, so he was highly frustrated. And Balak was even more frustrated because he had paid a lot of money for this weapon system called Bilam. So they're both very frustrated. At the end of the parasha last week, Bilam says to Balak, listen, if the curses are not working, the next best thing is to get the Jewish people to sin. And especially if you could get them to sin with promiscuity, because that's going to make Hashem angry at them, that's how we're going to take care of the Jews. And so they hatch this plan that they're going to send Midianite women to seduce the Jewish men. And unfortunately, a lot of men get caught up in this. And then there's a plague that starts to ravage the Jewish community. So Bilam really gets what he asked for. And it's in the thick of that, while it's, everybody's running around chasing these women, that Pinchas catches two people in the act. One is Zimri. Zimri is a very important person in the tribe of Shimon. And the other person is Cosbi. Cosbi is a Midianite princess. And the Torah tells us that basically what he does is he takes a big lance and he skewers both of them. And literally catches them in the act. And it's at that point that the tide turns and everybody wakes up and realizes they should not be involved with these women. And the plague stops and he saves many, many, many lives, even though 24,000 people have already died by that point. And that leads into this week's parasha, which is where Hashem makes a covenant with Pinchas and he rewards him for what he's done. So the Gemara, not this Gemara, it's a different Gemara, it's in Sanhedrin. The Gemara says that there were multiple miracles that happened to Pinchas at that time. And in fact, there's another view, not in the Gemara, elsewhere, that actually says many more miracles happened than what the Gemara listed. So just one or two of the miracles, we're not going to go through every single one of them, but just one or two of the miracles, just to give you a little bit of context, is when he came into the tent and he caught Zimri and Cosbi in the act. So at that point in time, you have to understand what the halacha is. The halacha is that if a person catches a Jewish person having an affair with a non-Jewish person, if they catch them in the act, they have the right to kill them. That was essentially the halacha that Pinchas was acting on. A halacha which Moshe had not taught, or at least not in that particular context. Now, the halacha also says that if the Jewish person who's now about to be killed reacts in self-defense, and he kills his would-be killer, then he is exempt from any punishment because self-defense. So the first miracle is that Zimri did not try to defend himself. That's a miracle. Imagine, here comes a guy with this big spear. Your natural reaction is obviously, and if not to defend himself physically, even just to defend himself verbally, if he would have shouted or screamed, that would have been enough for Pinchas to have to back off. So it's a miracle that didn't happen. That's one of the miracles. The other miracle is that Pinchas's aim was as good as it was, because basically the way that the Torah implies the story is that he got the spear in exactly the right part of the anatomy, that afterwards everybody could see why he killed them, because he pierced them right through the organs they were using to sin with. Then we're told Pinchas uses his spear to lift them both up and carry them out of the tent into the public so everybody can see why he killed them. Now, to be able to carry that weight on his spear, that was a miracle. They were told that an angel came along and widened the doorway for him so he could actually get out of the door of the tent, because it wasn't really practical to be able to get out of the door of the tent. And then the Gemara says that there was an angel also that created a big disturbance in the community at that time, so people wouldn't attack Pinchas, because, again, in their mind, Pinchas was a nobody, and Zimri was a very senior member of the community. So the natural response is they should have lynched him. So it was another miracle that they got distracted and they didn't attack him. So Rashi's basically telling us, because Pinchas in his story experienced multiple miracles that happened to him, that's why if you dream about Pinchas, that's a sign that wonderful things are going to happen to you as well. That's how it would seem to be. And the truth is, what Rashi is telling us actually seems to make a lot of sense, because the alternative is that people would think the reason that dreaming about Pinchas is associated with Pele, with something which is wondrous, you'd think is similar to Pil. Pil was the same letters, or some of the letters are the same as the word Pele. So maybe you'd think that because Pinchas starts with a Pei, and Pele starts with a Pei, maybe that's the link. Okay? The problem with that argument, to say that it's because it's the Pei, because it's the sound, because it's the same letter, is, let's be honest, it's only one letter that's the same. And besides which, it's not like the Gemara over here is saying that you're dreaming of the word Pinchas. It's saying that you're dreaming of the person Pinchas. You see, because what's going to happen next is the Gemara is going to then talk about what happens if a person dreams of the names. So it goes through various names, and it goes through names where in the name there's the letter Nun. So the Gemara says if a person dreams of somebody whose name has one Nun in it, that implies that one miracle will happen to them. But if a person dreams of a name that has two Nuns in it, that means many miracles will happen to them, like the names Yochanan, Hananya. If you have those dreams, it means multiple miracles will happen to you. And their association clearly must be the letter. The letter Nun stands for the word Neis, which is a miracle. The only thing is that in that context, the Gemara is saying if you dream of the word, not of the person. So you see the word in front of you, because you're seeing a word with more than one Nun, therefore that implies you're going to have more than one miracle. Over here, the Gemara is not saying if you see the word Pinchas in your dream, that something amazing is going to happen to you. Here, the Gemara is saying if you see Pinchas, the person in the dream. So that's why Rashi's argument seems to make a lot of sense, that this is not because of the association between the Pei of Pinchas and the Pei of Pele. It's because of the story of Pinchas, because Pinchas had multiple miracles happen to him in his life. Therefore, if you dream about Pinchas, you must expect that something wonderful is going to happen to you in your life. Something wondrous, something spectacular, something amazing is going to happen to you in your life. Now, this word Pele, that something wonderful or something incredible is going to happen to you in your life, we have to understand what does that actually mean. In other words, if I say Nes, I say a miracle, you know what I'm talking about. A Nes means something that is outside of the realm of nature. In fact, the definition of a Nes, of a miracle, is something that breaks the rules of nature. Right? So, pick a miracle, any miracle. Think of a miracle. What miracle comes to mind? Hanukkah, right? Yeah, exactly. So what comes to mind? The miracle of Hanukkah. Why is it a miracle? Because if you've only got a little bit of oil, and that oil is only enough to light for one night, but then that oil then lasts for 8 nights, that means you have broken the rules of nature. The rules of nature say this volume of oil can only burn for this amount of hours. If this volume of oil is now burning for 8 times as much hours, that tells you that it's broken the rules of nature, right? Here's another example. The splitting of the sea. The nature of water is that it should flow. It's completely unnatural for water to pile up and stand vertically. So if the water stands up, that means you've broken the rules of nature. Okay, so that's what a miracle is. Now, a Pele, what did you say Pele means? Wonders. If you go to Victoria Falls, you could say this is a Pele. It's something which is a wonder. It's one of the wonders of the world. Because the nature of the word wonder is that it's something which makes me go, wow. But that doesn't necessarily have to break the rules of nature. There are many things within nature that are wondrous. No? So how do I know that the word Pinchas, that the person Pinchas, how do I know that the person Pinchas means that what's going to happen, this wondrous event that's going to happen in my life, how do I know that it's a miraculous event? Maybe it's not. Maybe it just means something wonderful is going to happen. For example, maybe I'm going to land a tremendously successful business deal. It's not a miracle, but it would be wonderful. Right? Maybe what's going to happen is that you're going to discover, please God, that one of your children is expecting. It's wonderful. It's not a miracle. So the name Pinchas, or the person Pinchas, does not necessarily automatically mean that it is a sign of miracles. It could be a sign of wonders. So that's something we have to analyze. In fact, I'll tell you something interesting. So we'll do something interesting just for 1 second. Let's go back. If a person dreams, and in their dream they see the word Nachum, what does it mean? Nachum, but I'm saying in what we've learned so far, Nachum has a nun. We've said if you dream of a nun, it means a miracle is going to happen to you. What happens if a person dreams of the name Hanan? It's got two nuns. So that implies that there'll be multiple miracles, right? So let me ask you now, in the word Pinchas, isn't there a nun?
Only one.
Not only is there a nun, but Pinchas also has a samach. In other words, in the word Pinchas, you've actually got the word Nes. The full word of a miracle is inside the name Pinchas. So it does seem a little bit strange that the Gemara will tell us, if you dream about Pinchas, what's going to happen? Not a Nes, not a miracle, instead a Pele, something which is wondrous. Doesn't add up. The same Gemara is going to tell me, if I just see one letter Nun out of the word Nes, that means a miracle is going to happen. But here I've got Pinchas who's got the word Nes in his name, and you're not telling me that that's a miracle. So we've got to understand, is the message of the dream of Pinchas less than a miracle, just something which is wondrous? The same as a miracle, because there's the word Nes in his name, or something which is greater than a miracle, because it's wondrous. And maybe wondrous means that it's even something beyond a miracle. So, in fact, some of the commentaries want to suggest that if you have a look at the story of Pinchas, because remember Rashi said that Pinchas experienced multiple miracles on the day that he killed Zimri and Cosby, some of those miracles are not really miracles. For example, the fact that Zimri didn't shout at him is not a miracle. It's surprising, so it fits into the category of wondrous, because you didn't expect it. You would have thought that he'd fight back, and he doesn't fight back. But is that really a miracle? Not necessarily a miracle. Or the fact that Pinchas, the way that he lanced them, was exactly in the right part of the body. Is that a miracle? I mean, it's impressive. It's wondrous. You look around, you see there are people in this world who have tremendous talents, who can do incredible things, and their aim is spectacular. And from great distances, they can hit targets and whatever the case is. You don't call it a miracle. So some of the commentaries want to say that actually Pinchas, in his story, did not necessarily experience miracles. He had wondrous things that happened to him. The only problem with that is that on the list are things which are clear miracles, because, for example, it says that the angel came along and expanded the doorway. Now, anytime an angel pops into your life, we would call that a miracle. So that does seem to imply that there's a miracle going on in Pinchas's life. And the second one, which is that an angel came along and got everybody distracted so that they wouldn't lynch him. Again, if there's an angel in the story, then it means that there's a miracle. So what we're going to have to understand is, what is the meaning of the word Pele? Does Pele just mean something which makes you go wow? Or does Pele mean something which is even greater than a miracle? That's going to be really important for us to understand what the symbolism is of the dream of Pinchas. But actually, much more importantly for us, let's be honest. I don't think anybody at this table has ever had a dream of Pinchas. Maybe tonight you'll have a dream of Pinchas because we're talking about it. But outside of that, the likelihood of ever having a dream of Pinchas is not particularly high. But at the same time that we're analyzing the dream, clearly it must be telling us something about Pinchas. And that's really what we're going to try and unpack over here, is who is Pinchas? Is the whole of Pinchas's character all just about one story that happened on one day in his life? Because that's currently what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like, right? There was a particular event that is the big event in Pinchas's life. And in the time of that event, there were various miracles that happened. And as a result of that, the Gemara is telling us if you dream about Pinchas, that means that a Pele is going to happen in your life. So those are the two questions we're going to have to answer. What is a Pele? Is a Pele on the same level as a miracle, or is it beyond a miracle? And what is it about Pinchas, the person, that his personality represents something wondrous? That's got to be a little bit more than just one event that happened in his life. Okay, so those are the two things that we're going to, please God, unpack over the course of this week.